Hello, Holistic Heroes. Thank you so much for joining us. We are here with Jackie Faber, and she is an amazing person who I actually met on TikTok. And she talks about being trauma-informed healing and being empowered to be your authentic self during and after. And I love the transformational work she does. And the thing that made me fall in love with her was the examples that she gives that it's relatable. She's relatable, people. So I absolutely love you. Thank you so much for being on the show. Welcome.
Oh, thanks, Lily. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
So, being one of the foremost experts in trauma-informed spiritual healing and being a life coach in that way, my first question, as people who are watching and listening may be in a difficult situation, pause. Trigger warnings. We will be talking about abuse. We will be talking about drama. We will be talking about essay. We will be talking about trauma. All of those things. If you are unable or not in the right mindset or not in a safe place, please watch later. Trigger warnings all around the entire episode, people, the whole hour. All right. So, people who are listening who are still in it, still in a traumatic situation, still in an unfortunate, difficult, abusive situation, can they start their self-care already, or do they have to wait till they're out?
Speaking from my own experience, I was in the situation when I started the self-care. So, in these toxic, abusive relationships, a big piece of it is a whole phase of devaluation, right? So they beat you down slowly, piece by piece. And so you feel like you're like the worst fucking human in the world. There is absolutely nothing you can do that's right. They will find every way to criticize absolutely everything, and not just like the things that you do, but pieces that make you you, like the parts of yourself that you once loved and that they once praised you for. Now those pieces, those parts, they despise. Like they act like you're crazy and you're stupid, and why would you like that? And it really starts to chip away at your self-esteem. And so when I was at like the lowest of lows, like I literally felt like I was depressed. I was in this relationship, I was depressed. I didn't know what to do. I tried to bend over backwards to be everything that this person was asking me to be, but nothing mattered, nothing worked. And I had enough lived experience in my life where I had, worked myself out of depression before. And so I knew that the thing I needed to do was to focus on my self-care. I knew that that was 100% what I needed to do in order to pull myself out of this depressive state. So I did that. I started to, and I even like had conversations with my partner at the time. Like, I just think I'm depressed. I don't know why I'm so horrible. I don't know why our relationship sucks so bad. It's my fault. Like, I'm just depressed. I need to work myself out of it. Let me focus on my self-care. And so I started doing that. I started a meditative practice, and I started, working out and eating healthy and doing all these things that I knew were going to get me grounded back into myself and my body and feeling good. And this is what I knew I needed to do. But of course, once my energy shifted away from focusing on him and started focusing to myself, then the abuse got worse.
Yes.
So so I think that that's super telling. Like, if you are at a place where you're absolutely lost and you don't know, and you're being told that you're the problem and you're the abusive one in the relationship and you need to fix yourself, the moment you try to fix yourself, the reaction from them is going to be so telling. If they have a problem with you trying to fix yourself, let me promise you, you are not the problem.
Yeah, that's a big red flag. That's like,
Yeah.
oh, this is obvious now. And for me, it was a lot of like, I believe that you have to start taking care of yourself before you leave, or else
Mhm.
you're never going to feel any self-worth to leave.
Yes.
It sounds so odd, but my big suggestion to people is keep it a secret. When you start, it's all for you. And this actually comes from when I was 17 and doing spiritual training with a mentor. She said, all of your spiritual gifts, everything that you're working on, everything that you're growing into, don't tell anybody. And
Yeah.
from a spiritual energetic standpoint, she said the second anyone else's energy get involved, it will shatter. It is so fragile that it'll break and you'll lose it. And I
Hmm.
treat self-care the same way. It's like when I first started, it's like, nope, I'm not telling anyone that I'm drinking more water. I'm just going
Yeah.
to drink more water.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big thing too, as we're talking about, like they beat you down to where you have no self-worth and then you feel like you deserve it. Tiny, tiny steps move mountains, move
Exactly.
drinking more water, and you do things with your self-care. You focus on what you can control.
Exactly.
You can't control your sleep. We both know this. They will wake you up
They
early.
will.
They will come in late. Well, I didn't know I woke you up, asshole. And so you concentrate, your self-care needs to be everything that you can control and do in private when you start. And so
Yeah.
I always say drinking water, doing things in private. Every time you're in your car, that's when you meditate. That's when
Yeah.
you do your deep breathing. When you go to the grocery store, you take a few extra minutes down the cereal aisle, baby. And you
Yeah.
just look at all the kids' cereal and let your inner child be happy because you know you loved that toy. At least I did. And I would binge cereal to get to the toy at the bottom. So, like, you find little ways that are just for you that have nothing to do with the other person and things that they don't even see.
Yeah.
That's how I take it for that first step. While you're still in it, it needs to be private, it needs to be all about you.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Because they will try and rob you of anything. And
Mm-hmm.
they need to cut you down so that they feel better about themselves. And so I love the idea of like in your car taking that extra, taking that time. Because even when I did like commit to a meditation practice in the morning, straight up, he was keeping me up late at night. So I wasn't, able to get up in the morning to do my
Mm-hmm.
workout, to do my meditation. I, decide that I want to eat healthy. Well, he comes home with a bunch of junk food, right? Like anything they can do to sabotage you taking care of yourself, they do. So I love those suggestions of finding those moments where you can do it for yourself.
Yep. And it's I do the same thing. It's slightly different, obviously, for like single moms or people who are
Hmm.
neurodivergent. I'm like, oh no, when you are in the bathroom, you wash your hands for 30 more seconds and you just
Hmm.
feel the water. You have lotion in your purse that you never have in the house because it's your pampering lotion, it's your special
Hmm.
lotion. And that way they can never go, oops, I threw that away. And I really appreciate that. And it was something you had said on one of your TikToks really got me thinking, and I would love to discuss it with you. You said, whenever I did yoga, that's when they would decide to grab my ass.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, don't, one, it's sexualizing something that's not sexual.
Yeah.
But two, it really made me start thinking, so once you're out, one, you're out, yay, we celebrate you, we validate that, go you. Once you're out, how does your self-care change? Because for me, it got so tainted by trauma that like mine was Pilates. And
Hmm.
like it took me months and months to go back to Pilates because it was like, nope, that just reminded me of, and that's what reminded me of the yoga butt. And I was just like,
Right.
yep, so I think a good thing to remember for people is that after you may have similarities from what your self-care looked like before trauma, but it probably looks a lot different after too. You're going to add and especially modify what you already did so that
Hmm.
it doesn't have that lingering energy. And now I like schedule my day around Pilates because I would go to a class and that would always be the time that he had a crisis.
Yes.
And so I could never go to class. And now it's like, oh no, unless you are my mother and are on fire, and I'm the only one with water, I'm going,
Yeah.
period. And that became like such a rigid rule for me, but it made me feel so much better that I was like, oh, you're in a crisis? Like, no, that I get 60 minutes.
Yeah.
This is what I get. And it's for me. And most people in my life know it. They're like, nope. But that's another thing with this same trauma. I had a weekly meeting on Wednesdays, and he called and messaged during the business meeting, and then he door dashed food to the house during the virtual meeting. And I got yelled at after because I did not confirm that the meeting wasn't canceled. I told him that I had a meeting every Wednesday at 10 a.m. And so and he's like, but you didn't like message me and tell me that the meeting was still happening. And I was like, why would a standing
Why
meeting
do
be
it?
canceled unless there's a flood or a fire? But
Yeah.
no, so it, you may become rigid with your self-care. How do you feel about that?
Well, I agree. Like, I think like once you get out and once you're able to, really take the time to focus on yourself, your self-care is going to be the most important thing in your life. And I think that it should be, honestly. I think that that is how you really get back in touch with who you are, because you lose sense of who you are in these relationships. You completely lose the things that brought you joy, and you're going to safeguard those things. You're going to create really rigid boundaries, and you're going to safeguard those things, because when you don't have those tight boundaries, you allow people to infiltrate, and you end up allowing them to rob those pieces of you, right? So I think that that's perfectly a natural, normal thing to do. And once you start finding safe people, you're not going to need to be so rigid, because they're going to respect your boundary anyway. So, and I think that's but you need those rigid boundaries to find the people that are going to be safe in your life, right?
Absolutely. And whenever I think of like as us healing, you can heal and do things out of a trauma response or PTSD. And let's be honest, we've all done it. We've
Mm-hmm.
all done like, this is what needs to happen. And what we're talking about here today, people, is you feel so empowered that you set boundaries. You feel so worthy. Like it sounds very daunting when you come out of these situations. It's like, oh my God, I have to rebuild the wheel and learn how to make fire and learn how to breathe correctly because I've been holding my breath for a year,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. You will get to a point. Don't build all of your self-care from that fight, flight, freeze, fawn. You build it from, oh my gosh, I actually enjoy this. So what I was doing right before we started filming was dancing around my kitchen while scrubbing my stove because I got a new stop cleaner and I got really happy about it. I'm a goddess. Oh, yes, I am. And I was and I was like, yes, and dancing around. And I was like, this is self-care. Like I am cleaning because I'm a Cancer. Our home is part of like our soul. So I'm like, I like it to be clean. And I got a new scrubber. And it can be fun. Like these mundane things that we're talking about can be fun. I always say, get the cute water bottle. Get the cute water bottle.
The cute water bottle.
Yes, yes. Do the things that make you happy. Your self-care doesn't have to be daunting. Like when I say like I'm rigid about Pilates, I'm rigid in the celebration of what my body is capable of.
Mm-hmm.
And that is such a different feeling than like this has to happen this way or else I'm not going to be okay. You don't come it from that energy. You come it from an empowered energy. And that's why, people like Jackie and I exist. We're the ones that are like, oh, you're a little tense. Let's have some fun. You're a little tense. Let's be gentle. That type of thing. So as you have grown and flourished and you were amazing and now you're an amazing badass with a business. So as you are doing this, can you give us like a picture, a sneak peek? What does your self-care look like now as it's ever evolving, of course?
Well, I do the same, like I do the same that I did before. Meditation is such a huge piece of my self-care, because I just find that one, it gets me really grounded into my spiritual side, right? When I can actually feel the energy moving in my body. I just love getting in touch with that every day, because it makes me feel like I'm a part of something bigger, right? So I spend at least a half an hour, 20 minutes to a half an hour meditating every morning. And then I honestly like, my work. My work is self-care because I get to help people every day tap into, you know, their truth, what brings them joy.
Mm.
Um, I still I have hobbies that I wasn't allowed to do before when I was in a relationship. So, um, being able to invest in the things that bring me joy. And you mentioned this earlier. I think that that's so important. Connecting to the things that make us happy. I think that like we live in a society that really encourage us to dissociate from our feelings, but our feelings are um, the most important guidance that we have because you know when we have those moments where we feel really good and like our whole body tingles and just something resonates and it takes you over and it could just be scrubbing your stove like that is where we find happiness and gratitude and peace and love and just like enjoying those moments. And so a big piece of my self-care too is looking for those little moments of celebration every day. Because when you're focusing on the things that bring you happiness, you're able to detach from the things that don't, right? And I just think that where your attention goes, energy flows. So the more you're, you know, focusing on the positive things in your life, the better you're going to get at, the more positive is going to come to you, right?
Yes. Yes. I love that. And I love that you're like, yes, mine stayed the same because you're the same, like you're the same awesomeness. Like you didn't lose yourself in that. And,
No.
and that is amazing. And that's a testament to what happens after, you know?
Well, and I think too, like where I evolved was I got more spiritual
Hmm.
in my healing. So I turned to Reiki. I got, you know, my level, I'm at my level 2 right now, and I do want to go get my master's. But I think like I had a little bit of spiritual before I met him, but I wasn't so in tune to it. But starting the meditation practice when I was in the relationship and about a year into meditating, I was still in the relationship. That's when I started to notice the energy moving through my body and my hands being on fire. And that's when I started to connect to that side of things and really open myself up to, you know, a more spiritual side. And I think that that is something that I have since the relationship ended, nurtured a lot more and brought more into my self-care. Like every full moon, there's some meditation that I'm doing, or, you know, I'm out there with my crystals, I'm grounding in the grass, like whatever I need to do to give myself that energy exchange and that feeling of just aliveness that you can only get in those moments, you know? So
Yes, and I've been spiritual my whole life. I was born with my gifts and I actually started training at the age of 10.
that's
And
amazing.
so I that was such a so I love hearing people who are like, "Oh yeah, the universe hip checked me into awakening." And I
Yes.
mean, it was painful, but it was awesome. I love that. For me, if you couldn't tell us, I'm smiling as I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm a dancer around my kitchen." It was fun. Like
Hmm.
you gained so much spirituality. I love fun. I loved fun when I was a kid. I loved playing and everything like that. But you lose so much of it because even when you're having fun, like as an adult in those situations, you're constantly thinking, like, okay, but this is what I need to say, and this is what I need to do, and this is how I need to behave. And so I make so many things just entertaining. Um, I recently told a person that I was dating, I'm like, I don't think we should ever shower together. And they said, why? And I'm like, I'm really weird. And he was like, oh, what do you mean? And I said, in a cart, I said, just randomly, not every shower, but just randomly before stepping into the shower in a cartoon voice, I just went, the Muffin Man, and laughed hysterically and then took my shower. And he was like, what? And I'm like, yeah, I'm weird. I am openly and unapologetically authentic now. And that's weird. But I love it. It makes me so much happier that it's like, I don't have to
Hide these
clean.
parts of myself.
Yeah. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't have to clean because it's like, okay, but someone's coming over or you're going to be judged. It's like, I'm cleaning because I bought a new scrubber and I'm happy about that. And, and so I made everything fun. And that's why, like, there are even for all my followers know, there are tons of like different little stuffed animals that have different meanings that I'll just like hold up. We have Daryl, the emotional support duck. You know, we have Winnie, the witch, our magical mascot. And it's just for fun. It's like there are these symbols that I have around my house that are just for fun. That it's like, well, that's childish. I'm like, oh yeah, it is. And it's awesome. Yes, I'm a grown ass adult with an international business, and I have so many different stuffies that I talk to. You can do whatever you want after trauma. The possibilities are endless, endless, baby. So yeah, that's how I changed. Is that I intentionally made everything fun.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. And you need to do that. And you need to, and that's, like we spend, well, most people spend their whole like young adult, adolescent, child, we cut ourselves off from that fun. Like we cut ourselves off from the playfulness of our inner child because we just let society cloud the way we think about ourselves, the way we feel about ourselves. And I think like really healing is getting back to the fun, playfulness, and the imagination and the limitless possibilities of our inner child, and allowing that to come out and be a part, embracing it and having that be a part of you. So
Yes, it's that quote, what's life without whimsy?
yeah.
So being an expert in this and helping so many people, what would you, now that you've helped so many people and you've seen so many different ways to heal, what would you have done differently on your path? How would you have changed it?
You know what? You sent me these prompts and I've seriously been thinking about this question because I don't know that there's anything that I would change, because I feel like the universe gives you what you're ready for in each stage, right? So while I can look back and say, after I was healing from my, marriage, I wish I would have done the shadow work. I wish I would have done, the feminine energy healing work. I wish I would have done that because that came up. The universe showed it to me and I was like, I don't think I need to do that yet. And maybe had I done that, I wouldn't have ended up in a relationship with a narcissist. But I think that everything happens for a reason. There is path. There's I was given what I was ready for. And so I mean, even though it's been, I had a lot of trauma as well. And I have had lots of stories that I've had to work through, generational trauma, lived trauma, like everything that I've had to work through. But at the end of the day, I'm grateful for it all because it's led me here. It's led me to be able to help so many people, to have no shame in sharing my experiences and putting words to things that sadly so many people experience. And without that life path, without those experiences, I wouldn't be here. So I don't know that I would necessarily change anything. I think it all happened the way it was supposed to, right? Everything happens for a reason. Everything is divine timing. We open our eyes when we're ready to open our eyes, and we heal when we're ready to heal, right?
Absolutely. And I think you bring up a really good point. The stuff that we're talking about, we have talked about narcissistic abuse, and we've alluded to like dating, and that's where our abuse comes from. That's not the only place. It's from, we are talking about any and all, baby, any and all. Mistreatment from a teacher counts. I was talking to a client yesterday, and her husband, PTSD from the military. And it's like he had to heal from that. And it wasn't combat. It was like PTSD from fellow officers and stuff like that. Like any kind of mistreatment can be healed, and we're here for it. So if you're watching and going, well, it wasn't my boyfriend, it was my dad, or it wasn't, it wasn't a family member, it's not generational, it was a one-off thing. Oh yeah, equal opportunity trauma. There is no pain Olympics with either of us ever. There is no dick measuring.
it'll still get trapped in your body. Like the moment you don't complete the stress response cycle back to safety, it gets trapped and it gets stored, right? And so you know, we always think of trauma as the thing that happened outside of us, but it's the thing that happens inside of us, in our nervous system response. And so if we don't have safe spaces to work through that trauma, it's going to stay and it's going to be triggered and it's constantly going to show up. So yeah, like you said, it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter if it's physical abuse or an emotional abuse, or you know, an invalidation. It doesn't matter what it is. It's still impactful. It still affects you. And bringing awareness to that so that people, like you said, there's no measurement. We need to decide that my trauma is worse than your trauma. Like everybody has it. It's a matter of, you know, how much are we gonna allow this to impact us? Like what sort of coping skills are we developing because of it? And are those coping skills actually helpful for us, or should we find, you know, more healthy coping skills so that we can work through that trauma and let it go?
Yes, and as much as we talk about red flags with other people, there are red flags on our healing journey. And I feel like that's one of them. Is if there are any trauma Olympics, if there's any dick measuring with trauma, I'm always like, I don't engage with that. When people are like, oh, but I've had it this bad and this is why I'm worse than you, I'm always like, okay. And I disengage from the conversation. I will not validate that kind of behavior. But to me, that's a red flag on your healing journey. Shaming yourself is the process, but it's also a red flag that like, okay, this is something we need to deal with.
And shaming other people. Like I see a lot of people too that like claim to be you know, healing and on the other side, but then they will victim blame. Like, well, you need to take accountability for your part. Well, you can't take accountability if you don't know. Like there's just so much victim shaming and blaming and that happens in our society. And I think that if you've really done like the deconstruction work, you understand that people come to their insights when they come to their insights. You can't force it. You can't, we have to be ready. And so if somebody's not quite there yet, we can still hold space and hold compassion for them, right?
And you bring up so many good points. That's why you're a guest, because you're fabulous and you're intelligent and it's delicious. But it's a journey, and a lot of people who like shame and victim blame. So part of this is like spiritual. We're doing the spiritual, we're doing the woo, which we love. But I also talk to tons of psychologists and psychiatrists and mental health professionals and social workers to gain that aspect throughout my work. And I have talked to so many of them who say, all right, healing from anxiety, depression, chemical imbalance in the brain, that type of thing is so much different than healing from trauma. Like they say it is so different. I did a program after I was severely abused and I hated it. And I argued with the teachers a lot about it. And then years later, I had talked to a psychologist and they were like, that's because it was geared toward, for lack of a better word, the normal people, the people who don't have trauma, who just have anxiety and depression and need to get over that. They were not treating trauma. You have trauma. And so when you're looking at these things, and if you are feeling shame and blame from a professional, look at a different modality, because chances are they're going from the modality that is beautiful and wonderful and helps people who have those things. And you can have anxiety and depression and PTSD, but if you are healing from trauma, you don't go with the first option. You go with the second option and commit to it. And so that's something that I think is really important for people to know as far as resources, because for years, my abuse started when I was like 12 months old and then just marathoned through most of my life. And I couldn't understand why no therapy was working. And I had I kept going through therapists like water. And it's because I finally found one and they were like, That's because they were treating the first one. You needed someone who just treated trauma. And then once I found
Mhm.
someone who just treated trauma, I was like, you're telling me it could have been this easy a decade ago?
But I also don't know that they had the knowledge back then, right? I don't know how old
Yeah.
you are, but there's a lot more research now on trauma, like on and everything can be trauma informed, right? Like especially now that we know that trauma is the impact on the body. It's
Yes.
so, you know, the cognitive stuff. And I think that that's really interesting too is, you know, therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, it's all focused on mentally grasping, you know, all of the things that happen. And I could before you know, the narcissistic abuse I suffered, like I knew everything about my codependency, about my people pleasing. Like I was able to cognitively understand all of it, but what I couldn't figure out was the nervous system responses I was getting in my body when I was triggered. Like I cognitively understood this is not the same scenario that, but I was being brought right back there
Yep.
and my body was responding. And so that's why I think like somatic therapy, somatic work, healing energy work, like this is why we need these modalities because that helps release the stored trauma in your body.
Yes. There is a phrase that I use. You can't think your way out of trauma, but you
Mm-mm.
can move your way through it.
Mhm.
Because so many of us, it's like if I think about this hard enough, if I understand absolutely everything about me, I it'll be fine because then I'll understand it. And then all of a sudden you're having a reaction again. And I love asking people, when's the last time you checked in with your right big toe? And they think I'm ridiculous. I'm like, no, no, you not only like dissociate from your entire body, like check in with just different parts at different times just to see what's up. Like
Mhm.
I'm morbidly curious as to what my pinkies feel. Like the back of my neck. And people are like, "Why?" And I'm like, "Why wouldn't you want to experience life? You are a human having a human experience, and
Mhm.
dissociating is a very real part of trauma,
Mhm.
and experiencing the human life is so amazing. So check in, check
Well,
in.
and I think too, like it's not just dissociation as a part of trauma. Dissociation is a part of our culture. Like everything in our culture teaches us to dissociate. You know, whether you're scrolling, you're on your phone, or you're, you know, drinking alcohol, or you know, doing drugs, or you know, turning to sex. Right? Like
Mhm.
we're taught to dissociate from our body, to dissociate from our feelings, to not pay attention. You know, and so yeah, a big part of I think the healing work is getting back in touch with your body because your body is here to tell you what's right and what's wrong and what's up, and you got to listen to it um, because that's where you're gonna find your path to, you know, your highest self is really getting in touch with your body.
Yes, and it's an amazing experience to do that. I read The Body Keeps Score,
Yeah.
and I loved that book. It was so informative. And it's so true. Like your body, you are a tree and every ring tells a story, baby. Don't think that that branch falling off didn't make it into the trunk of you.
Hmm.
You are absolutely a whole experience. So for those listening who are still in it, please know that we support you and you can reach out to either of us at any time. What advice do you have for those people who are still in the shit?
Oh, I think the biggest help that you can do is to start asking yourself the questions, is this mine? So when you have a thought or a feeling, you know, people like in specifically in narcissistic relationships, or if you have difficult, you know, people, toxic people in your life, and you hear, you know, a voice in your head and it's not a very kind voice, or it's criticizing you in some capacity, asking yourself, is this mine? Did I put this here? Or is this somebody else trying to feed me a narrative, because I guarantee you the moment you start questioning your thoughts and questioning, you know, your feelings, they're really good at making you feel guilty and issuing guilt trips. So like when you feel guilt, is this my guilt? Should I be feeling this guilt? Start questioning those things, because you will soon see that those thoughts aren't yours. Those feelings aren't yours. And to be able to start to differentiate between what belongs to you and what doesn't is going to really get you grounded in yourself, in your intuition, in your inner voice. And these are the things that you need to connect to in order to build your confidence, to make your plans to exit those relationships or those dynamics.
I love it. And that's a question that we use in empathy all the time, like feeling other people's emotions.
Mm-hmm.
For trauma, my version of this is, who does this serve?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever just happened, who does it serve? And it actually came up years ago, and I didn't like implement it into my like spiritual practice and business until much later. But a mom was with a daughter, and the daughter's like, "Oh God, I'm so fat, and now I have to buy new clothes because I'm fat." And the mom said, "Stop right there. Was that your first thought when you tried on the jeans?" And she said, "Yes." And she said, "Who does this serve? Does you thinking yourself fat serve you, or does it serve a clothing company for you to buy another pair of jeans and a different pair of jeans because you don't have the perfect body? Like, who does this serve?" And as much as that was like consumerism and capitalism, when I thought about it years later, like randomly, you know, those shower thoughts where it's like, "Oh, that was brilliant. I wish I had a pen." It was one of those. And it's like, but who, when this like, "Oh no, I need to do this and I need to speak this way," who does that serve? And it's like, if it doesn't serve me, it's not going to happen. And I don't mean that in a selfish way. There, something that we've touched on a little bit is that there is toxic healing. And I just want to touch on it just a little bit because it's such a complex thing that you swing into like the pain Olympics is a toxic form of healing. It's like, but I'm speaking my truth. And it's like, you are dick measuring, which is such an antiquated form of reality, let alone healing. But then another form is when you are so empowered that you are affecting other people. Like, you are so empowered that everything has to be everyone else's fault because it's happening to you, which is a victim mindset. And the example that I give people is, if you are working in an office space, and this is a real example from a client years ago, and we had to really tell, and I'm like, "Oh, you are not healing right. We got to take a step back. I'm so sorry." There, for everyone listening, anyone who says there's no wrong way to heal, bullshit. There's a lot of wrong ways to heal. Hurting other people, very wrong way to heal.
Yeah.
Explosive anger, very wrong way to heal. That weird thing that Gen X does and boomers, "Well, I turned out okay." Not the right way to heal. But the example is, you are in an office where there's like cubicles, so it's all open air and all you got is like, you know, your little desk or whatever. And you read out loud from your computer and you're like, "But that's what I need to do to work." There are 5 other people in that room. And if you are talking to your computer, you are now disrupting 5 people. And if your response is, "But I'm empowered to do this, this is the only way I can do it," it's like, okay, then you need accommodations and feel empowered to get accommodations to where you're not disrupting other people. If your healing is like hurt, not inconveniencing, but hurting other people and really causing disruption, that's toxic healing. And sadly, I've seen it more and more as it's become more mainstream for people to like heal from trauma. They swing so hard into like, "But this is what's best for me." And it's like, I acknowledge that that's what you said, but I'm not giving up my seat on the plane because it's what's best for you. I bought the seat type of thing. How do you feel about that? I get that this is a niche and totally a left turn, but how do you feel about the toxic side of healing? Because
Well, I think like I agree. And like I see it more when so say you have like a bad experience in a relationship, and instead of identifying, you know, the experience for the experience and the lessons that you need to, because I think that the key is like when we're not finding the lesson, we turn completely toxic in the other way. So like you have a bad marriage and you decide that all women are evil now or all men are evil now. Like that's not, that's a very rigid boundary, and that's, you know, but that's not helpful. That's not going to help you heal from the experience, right? So and the way that I find that best helps you navigate so that you don't swing in the entire opposite direction is looking for the lesson. What was I supposed to learn here? What was the universe trying to show me? Where, because all of our relationships are mirrors. And so it's trying to reflect back something that you need to work on and you need to heal. So what was this experience trying to teach me? What was I supposed to learn? And when you can find that, and when you can find, when you're finding that, I think that you also find self-compassion. And when you find self-compassion, you're able to extend empathy. You have to find it first within yourself. And so then you're able to extend empathy to other people. So while the other people around you are behaving in the way that, you know, they need to behave to placate their own egos, you're able to offer a little bit of grace, not to the point where you sacrifice yourself again, because we're not doing that. That sacrificing ourselves for others is not healing. But being able to extend them grace and not judge them while they're going through their journey. But that starts with self-compassion, right? And that starts with figuring out your lesson, because you're not going to be able to move through it to the place of balance. And that's where we need to be, is right in the middle, right in balance. If you're swung one way or the other, right?
Yeah. And I think it's also punishing
Mm-hmm.
is another one that I have caught myself saying before I admitted I was a toxic dumpster fire, you know? And but you can't do this because I have PTSD. And there are certain boundaries that, yes, that is very true. You cannot come up behind me and scare me, because I will scream and then everyone thinks the world is on fire, because I scream very loud when that happens. But it's if it's so rigid that it's like, this is, and now I'm punishing you, you don't get to have free will because I have PTSD. I think that that's another one, that punishing,
Mm-hmm.
like I have to be mean to you because my last boyfriend was mean to me. So to make sure that you're not mean to me, I now need to like be so rigid and irrationally, like you said, it's not balanced.
Somebody cheated on me in the past, so now you have to show me your phone and you have to prove to me you're
Oh,
not cheating. Like that's the same thing, right? It is
yes.
not my job to make up for your past experiences. You need to work through that. You need to heal through that. And yeah, making those rigid, those aren't boundaries, those are demands, that's controlling behavior, that's abusive behavior. Trying to control somebody else so that you don't experience your feelings, you don't experience, you know, trauma. If you feel like you have to do that, you're with wrong people, right? So or you haven't worked through your trauma yourself, and you're trying to make other people manage your trauma for you, and that is not that is not healing.
Yes, it's there's that phrase, you may not be the one like who hurt you, but it is your responsibility to heal you.
Mm-hmm.
And so many people, they look to the next to heal
Mm-hmm.
them, whether it was a parent or a partner or anything like that. It's always like, okay, this next one will be the one to heal me. It'll be, and I feel like that also comes from society though. That
Mm-hmm.
that magical myth and movie, that rom-com movie, it's like, I had a horrible relationship and then meeting this guy made everything perfect.
It's romanticized. Yeah, it is
Yes.
unrealistic. Like, I think that there is healing that comes in relationship, but you have to heal your relationship with yourself first, right? Like your
Yes.
relationship with yourself is the most important one. And the relationship you have with yourself, I do believe is reflected in the relationships you have with other people. So if you allow toxic people, if you, tolerate, don't have boundaries, and you allow toxic people to, push you around and take advantage of you, then that is the relation, that is the mirror, right? That
Mhm.
is the mirror. That is the universe saying, hey, let's look at this. Let's learn how we can build our self-worth. Let's learn what we're going to decide is acceptable to us, right? What are your values? What do you need? Because what you need and what you value is important. We don't have to bend over backwards and sacrifice ourselves for other people, because the right people won't ask you to do that, right?
Yes, yes. And again, if you're feeling certain ways, it may be because you haven't healed yet or they're not the right
Mhm.
people. Do the self work and self discovery. I had one of the coolest experiences um with someone, and they are their love language, their way of communicating is to help people and to fix people. And I don't mean that in a toxic way. I mean, they are above and beyond generous, want to do everything for everyone to make sure that they have an amazing life. And with me, I said, wait a minute, so you enjoy fixing people? Are you trying to fix me? And they said, no. And I was like, good. And I said, if you ever try to fix me, I will never speak to you again. I will find that to be the most offensive thing, that you think so little of me that I cannot heal myself. This is my journey. You will not take it from me.
Mhm.
And he said, why on earth would I ever try and do that? You got it. You're fine. And this was still while I was healing. And it was one of the most like lovely things that, one, I was allowed to say, like, don't you dare think
Yeah.
that because I have trauma, I need to be fixed. I don't. And he was like, you don't. But also, if you did need fixing, I wouldn't fix you. I would just sit here and you fix yourself. And then I was like, and I get a cookie, right? And he's like, yes, I'll hand you a cookie and you can fix yourself, because I'm a very food motivated person. So I think like when we actually communicate, it's so much better. Like our standards, our boundaries, our expectations. Oh, I love that phrase. It was all over TikTok a few weeks ago. Unexpressed expectations are
Mhm.
premeditated resentments. Oh,
Mhm.
I want that knitted on a pillow. I want that hung up in everyone's bedroom. I think
Yeah.
that is so deliciously true.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I've experienced that in my relationships too, where I would actually like get upset about something, and then I'd say, did I express this? Did I express this as something that I wanted? And if the answer was no, then no, I can't get upset about it. What I can do is communicate it and set a boundary. That's all I can do. Right. And then moving forward, if it's not met, then I mean, that's a whole nother ballgame. But I find in these toxic relationships, that is one of the things that causes a lot of problems. Is people expect you to read their mind. People expect you to know what they want before they even express it, and then they get mad, and then they get upset, and then they throw temper tantrums. And it's this communication is so important, but you also have to determine, like, is this person capable? Do they have the skills to receive my communication? Or is it good? Is everything I say filtered? Are they filtering it through their trauma, through their, lived experience? Do they have the capacity to actively listen and to actually hear? Are they curious if what I say doesn't resonate? Are they curious to understand more? Like, I think that we in part of the boundary work is trying to figure out, like, what is my responsibility in terms of communicating, and what is your responsibility in terms of comprehending? Right.
Yes. There was a woman who once said, I cannot remember her name now, that it's like, if you're the one speaking, it's your responsibility to be understood. It's not the listener's responsibility to decipher. So if they misunderstand, you need to learn how to communicate so that they can hear you. Again, outside of like toxic abuse.
Mhm.
And I found that because you always think like, who biffed it there? And it's like, if you're the one trying to give information, you have to give it effectively. And
Kindly, clearly, assertively.
yes.
Yes.
And I want to bring up that these situations don't just happen with interpersonal, they can happen with
Yeah.
business.
Mhm.
I had, you will laugh at the audacity. I had someone who was supposed to be on the podcast a long time ago, and the day of came and it's like, okay, we're 3 hours. I'll see you soon. And they were like, you didn't block off my schedule for me.
Oh.
So I double booked and now I have to reschedule. And then the whole 3 hours they were messaging me going, well, I might do it if I can move something, but I don't know. I really am doing you a favor. I'm like, no, you're not. No, you're not. Like, the podcast's doing just fine. But no, it's that it I was like, you oh no, it's not my job to block off your schedule, sweetie.
Yeah.
Not even close. So it does happen. The audacity happens everywhere. Please don't think it's
Mhm.
just happening with interpersonal friends and family and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So one last question for we've talked about what to do during. How about after? Like after someone's out of the shit, what's your advice for them?
This is a beautiful time because now you get to rediscover yourself, right? Like you get to do all of the things you weren't allowed to do. And I know that it can feel daunting. You're like, where do I even start? Honestly, the starting point is doing things that feel good, like learning how to pay attention to your body, what feels good. Do those things and pour all your energy into those things. And I always say to everybody, like I like my clients, like they'll say, like, I'm really nervous. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to start. Well, that is where you start. Like you get to not only you get to reinvent your life,
Yeah.
right? And when I feel like when you have these types of relationships, it gives you a whole new perspective of all of the stories you've been bringing with you throughout your life that have facilitated this relationship, right? So now you get to look at all of those stories and you get to decide if they actually work for you as an adult, right? Like, so all of our people pleasing tendencies, all of our beliefs about relationships, like, oh, it should be this and it should be that, like all of the rom-com bullshit that we've been fed, like you get to decide if those things actually work for you, if they're going to benefit you. And if they're not, you can just change your beliefs. And that's the biggest thing that I don't think a lot of people realize is a belief is just a thought we continue to think.
Mhm.
So you just have to change the way you think and you can completely change your belief because beliefs don't actually require any evidence. They don't require proof, right? So you get to look at all of those stories that you crafted, all those stories that are built in fear that you crafted as a kid and as society fed you and what you need to do and be in order to be accepted. And you get to decide none of that works for me anymore. I'm going to live how I want to live. I'm going to pay attention to what feels good and I'm going to make my decisions based on what feels good. I'm going to be selfish. After all these years of not being allowed to be selfish, I'm going to be selfish and I'm going to own it and I'm going to be proud of it. I'm embracing my narcissism because that's what you have to do. You
Mhm.
have to embrace it. So
Yes.
that's my advice. Like figure out what feels good and constantly be moving in that path.
Oh yeah. I always tell people, I'm like, I believe in self-centered living.
Yes.
And it's like, oh no, it's all about me because it should be, as it's
Mhm.
all about you for you. Like,
Yeah.
I need to come first for me. And so I have two little, not little pieces of advice. I'm minimizing. I can acknowledge that. Pieces of advice for after. The first one is about yourself, like where to start as the self exploration. I have people ask that all the time, and I always say, pick a category of personality. So, your zodiac, what
Mm.
element you like, the Myers Briggs test,
Mm.
and go for it. Like we talked about earlier, I am a Cancer. You want to know what Cancers are? We are overly emotional. We are very dramatic. We are very nurturing. We are very caring. We're very intuitive. And our homes are really important to us. So for me, it's like, okay, cleaning my house is a big thing. Wearing lounge clothes and being comfortable, feeling validated emotionally, all
Mhm.
very big to begin with. And that's just Cancer. Um, so you find those things, and that's part of what I do with my membership. It's like, we're going to figure out all your different personalities and you're going to pick one that you like. And then we're just going to go for it. And the other piece of advice is for you with other people. It's something that I learned, oh my God, like 2 decades ago. It's called share, check, share. We all have done a trauma dump on somebody. We've all word vomited. And what you do is you share something and you check to see how it goes. You also check for red flags. You also check in with yourself. And if everything's going okay, then you share a little bit more. And that's how you create relationships, because you're going to be creating relationships in a way that you may not be familiar with. You may never have learned skills to create healthy connections with people. And so instead of just jumping in all in, because so many people are like, this feels right, especially spiritual people. I have met way too many toxic relationships that go, we met on 11/11 and now we're together. And then 2 years later, they're sitting there and they're going, I hate this person. I wonder if I could smother them in sleep. And it's like, just because it's 11/11 don't mean jump. Like, that's just the first share. Now you check to make sure they're not a serial killer, and then you can share a little bit more. So it's constantly validating your own feelings, constantly checking in with yourself, and you're doing it in incremental steps. And this can be planned steps if you're like structure, or it can just be how you feel. But it's not all at once. It's not meant to be all at once. If everything happened, like you said, you wouldn't change anything about your healing process, because then it wouldn't be the beautiful thing that it is now and as impactful as it is now for other people. So with that, I know that you are one of the best in the business. You do trauma-informed spiritual life coaching. You help people on TikTok all the time. That's where we met. You do this. Are you open to new clients?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I love working with people. Anybody can like reach out to me by email on my website, and we can see if we're going to be a good fit. I think that like you want to make sure that you're going to be working with somebody that's a good fit for you, making sure that you're on the right path at the right stage in your journey to kind of take that next leap, because you just want it to fit, right? So absolutely, I'm always open to new clients.
Awesome. And how can they find you? What's your favorite form of being found?
From my website, there's contact forms on my website. So it's www.findingauthenticity.ca. I'm also can be found on TikTok at JFab Finding Authenticity, and Instagram finding_authenticity_. But email is the best, Jackie Faber at findingauthenticity.ca.
Awesome. Thank you so much for doing this, for giving your insight, for being so open about your own experience, that it inspires others. I appreciate you, and I know that my followers do as well. I would love to have you back on the show at some time in the future to talk more about this, because let's be honest, this is a topic that like could be talked about a lot.
And I feel like when you're in this like niche, when you're in this space, like it is something that you can talk about all the time. Like there is always new insights and new avenues. And as healers, like we just want to help people, push over that hump and get to the next step. And so, yeah, I've had a pleasure. It's been a pleasure talking about this with you. Thank you for inviting me on your show. And I am 100% open to another session in the future.
I love it. Thank you, all the listeners and amazing people who are checking in. Make sure to follow if you want to see more, and comment if you have any questions. We are obviously here to help, and we are elated that you are empowered enough on your journey to start healing. Bye, everybody. Thank you to all of the fabulous listeners out there. We do hope that you enjoyed the episode, or at least found it mildly entertaining. If you tune in next week, we will have even more magical shenanigans for you to enjoy. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and if you found us cool enough, please tell a friend. This is Lily McNamara with Lily of the Light, and if you want more of Lily or any of the other fabulous things that we do, visit lilyofthelight.com.